In our rapidly changing era, people pursue efficiency and a high quality of life. That's why repetitive work has always been a source of trouble for everyone. This has given way to the birth of the omniscient AI system. It will liberate humans from mundane tasks, giving them more time to pursue more valuable and fulfilling vocations. This omniscient AI system will be used in finance, healthcare, and every other industry out there. It will improve work efficiency and reduce human errors, creating more value for humanity. Humanity can thank the system's sole genius developer, Chung-Shin, for this. However, the media is more worried about ethical, privacy, and unemployment concerns, not seeing that AI will create more opportunities for everyone. Chen-Shin also strictly adhered to relevant laws and ethical standards to protect user privacy and rights. He coolly bade farewell to the press, telling them to look forward to what he had in store. Before entering the car, he was suddenly shot in the chest, a bullet piercing his heart. Pandemonium descended in the streets. The finest mind of the current generation was assassinated. A shady man walked away from the chaos with a calm professionalism. Chung-Shin felt his senses dull as he lay on the cold concrete floor. He had just received the Nobel Prize, and he had so many plans for humanity's future. That must have been why a higher power gave him another shot. He heard a mysterious voice initializing the reconstruction of his body into something called Robert. Maybe it's the voice of the netherworld, but the man of science had a hard time accepting that. Reflecting on his life, he had many regrets. He's been so consumed by his work at every waking hour. So, if there's an afterlife, he would like to do as he pleases. Sensing his wish, the system calculated a life plan suited for it. With his life data import completed, Chung-Shin was granted the unique skill called, "What you see is what you get." The next thing you know, the voice of the netherworld was gone. Unbeknownst to the genius, he was transported to the secret forest in the middle of the night. A miserably cold sensation spread across his body. He could feel the temperature, wind, and humidity. He can feel things, so he's not dead yet, and his lower body feels especially cold. Thinking of scenarios similar to what he's experiencing now, Chung-Shin panicked and jumped, uprooting himself from the silty ground and crashing headfirst on the soil. Out in the open, he could sense his body's outline, texture, and smell. Ideas and realizations wildly flashed inside his mind. If he was not mistaken, he had been reincarnated as a big freaking white carrot. Yes, you heard that right. Under the night sky, where the moon's gleam served as his spotlight, the carrot sighed. Just a few minutes ago, he was a genius scientist with a boundless vision to push humanity to a new era. Now he has to accept the fact that he has been reincarnated as a big white carrot. He also heard the voice of the netherworld call him Robert before he was thrust into this dark place. Even his new name sounded like something straight from the bottom of the food chain. Then, he heard that voice again. A monotonous and emotionless way of speaking, initializing the system. Once the initialization was done, the system demanded to be named. It looks like effective two-way communication is out of the question for now. The first name that came to his mind was his masterpiece of a project, the omniscient AI system, to honor his unfinished business. Then came the blinding bright light seemingly descending from the heavens above. Looking at it would make anyone's eyes hurt. With the system set up as an omniscient AI system, Robert will be provided with all-knowing and all-powerful services. Seeing that wall of text made his eyes gleam with all kinds of possibilities. To make it easier, he gave the system another nickname, Xiao Quan. The first thing he asked from the all-knowing database was what exactly he was. Is he a plant or an animal? What about gender? Xiao Quan beeped and responded that he belonged to the lowest level demon clan in this world, a carrot spirit. Usually, carrot spirits have the lowest demon power. They are genderless and not often preyed upon by stronger creatures. So, he should be relatively safe, at the very least. The next thing he asked Xiao Quan was whether he had any tasks lined up. Generally, in web novels, the system would often assign tasks to the transmigrator, but Xiao Quan didn't give him any grand missions. It just told him to enjoy his second chance in life. So, he was not some kind of overpowered MC. Robert is destined for a casual carrot life, but the genius in him still wanted to plan his career properly. His planning and deep thinking were interrupted by another unfamiliar burst of light that almost blasted him away. He must have crashed against something solid, and it hurt like hell, but his curiosity as to what this solid dome of light was much more intriguing. Focusing his eyes inside the light dome, he caught a glimpse of something otherworldly. There was a woman inside the dome. She was seemingly floating in the air as the light danced around her motionless body. Robert was speechless at the sight of such ethereal beauty. She had long and flowing white hair. The features of her face were nothing short of angelic, and the mysterious rings of runes surrounding her accentuated the mystery. But more than anything, she looked like a human. The woman must have heard Robert bugging out at the sight of the first human he saw and softly opened her eyes, curious as to what that sound was. Just as Robert was thrilled to see a human, the lady was just as delighted to hear the voice of one too. She had fully woken up and saw that the human she was expecting to see was actually a walking and talking white carrot. They made eye contact. Robert blushed, and the lady felt her heart flutter. The mystery lady had never seen such a big demon vegetable before. She ran to the edge of the light dome and curiously asked him how he got to this place, and if he was the one speaking the human tongue just now. It had been so long since she last saw a living creature that she did not know how to act right. At this moment, Robert still does not know that the girl in front of him will actually turn out to be a powerful witch who once destroyed the world. A global scourge. Future Robert knew, but present Robert was too busy looking at her genuine curiosity and charm, making his heart thump fast and his eyes glued. The lady kept on telling him that he looked so big and so cute, and she wanted to have him even though she could not fathom just how such a big carrot spirit managed to enter the secret forest. Realizing that he might have a unique opportunity in this situation, Robert fixed himself as much as a carrot could. He struck a pose, said hello, and asked if his size was considered large in this world. Robert's scientist brain kicked in as he tried to make sense of how a sleeping girl could be floating in the middle of the forest. Furthermore, he felt a sudden and chilling sensation of oppression the moment she opened her eyes. Meanwhile, she wholeheartedly explained that normally, carrot spirits are very small. They have no nutritional value, and even if swallowed, they don't provide spiritual energy. Robert just can't connect the oppressive feeling to this sincere girl. After her lengthy lecture about how useless carrot demons are, she went back to ask just why he was so big. No matter how you look at her, she's just an ignorant and inexperienced young girl with an inquisitive mind. However, Robert's careful nature made him think twice about how to handle this situation. Just what kind of innocent lady would be sealed inside a powerful barrier? The closer he got to the barrier in question, the ominous feeling grew. She might be some devious spirit deceiving a pure-hearted carrot. Still, he was confident that no one could easily manipulate the most renowned scientific mind in the world. So, the grand plan was to act all innocent and cuddly, harmlessly asking who the girl was and the reason she was trapped in the barrier. But the lady responded in a similar vein. She acted like a klutz, failing to remember the answers to his questions. She even took it a step further and cried that she couldn't remember anything at all. The only thing she could recall was her name, Bai Rui. Then came the pleading to be let out. Since she woke up, it's unclear just how many years have passed since she was imprisoned in this place. Every day, all she did was sleep or stare into the empty space. Robert was inherently cautious, and he swore to himself that he would never easily fall for this act. As the girl banged on the barrier dome, acting cute and begging for his help, he saw a phantom of the past. The image of a witch bathed in blood and darkness that brought about destruction everywhere she went with tears in her eyes. The one thing the innocent girl has in common with the witch is their desire to never be imprisoned alone in a lonely place anymore. As long as she can get out, she's willing to do anything. All this creepy stuff that Robert was perceiving messed with his head quite harshly. After regaining his bearings, he got curious as to what exactly that bizarre scene was just now. The lady worriedly asked him if he was okay. She continued that, as expected for a carrot spirit, just getting close to this place is the limit. She assured him that she'd be fine, and he didn't have to force himself to help. However, Robert is the type of guy who has the itch to figure out an explanation for everything that he sees, and he is confident that what happened earlier was not an illusion by chance. So, he asked Xiaoquan the system if the all-knowing and all-powerful companion could break the barrier seal. Robert chucked this risky business to the exploration of unsolved mysteries that every half-decent scientist should venture into. Xiaoquan instructed him to make contact with the surface of the barrier. His "what you see is what you get" skill was promptly activated. After a decoding process, Xiaoquan warned him that the barrier could not be fully destroyed due to the limit of his current spiritual power pool. However, the omniscient AI system can create a substitute for an alternative solution. He curiously asked Xiaoquan to elaborate on this substitution thing. It stated that without destroying the barrier itself, a substitute can be created to replace the girl trapped inside the prison. However, the duration of the substation is also limited by the user's spiritual power. In addition, the girl will automatically be registered as his retainer. She would be able to retain a high degree of autonomy and free will, but cannot disobey the master's orders. This is what being a retainer meant. To Robert, that sounds right up his egotistical alley. Having absolute control over someone else really suits his preferences. While he was chatting with the system prompt, the lady was still waiting for his response. Robert the carrot finally decided to release the lady now, but warned her that she would have to become his retainer to do so. He prepared a whole speech to convince her to agree, but the lady was already willing to do whatever it took to get out. She does not want to talk it over, and she does not need an extensive explanation of what being a retainer means. And that was because she already knew what being a retainer entails. She knew that if she was to take Robert's helping hand to get out, he would be her master, and she was 100% down with that. Hearing her say those words and look like an irresistible angel almost turned the carrot into a bumbling fool. To spur him even further, the lady put on a sultry voice and slowly asked him what he wanted to do with her as soon as she got out of the barrier. Sliding her hand down to her chest, she seductively proclaimed that she was open to everything that he wanted. That's the kind of retainer she will be. Robert, who died from a gunshot wound in his previous life, almost died of blood loss from a nosebleed due to his forbidden thoughts in this second life. Based on Xiaoquan's calculations, they could scrounge up a 1-hour substitution per day. When asked if Robert wanted the substation to materialize now, he asked for a timeout, as he was still feeling lightheaded because of his dirty thoughts. Thankfully, the little piece of rationality he still had kicked in, and he laid down a few conditions before they entered this venture. The lady was open to listening to his demands. First, because of her severe amnesia, she will have to obey his every command from now on. Otherwise, the agreement will be null and void. Second, she can only leave the barrier for 1 hour each day. When his spiritual capacity increases in the future, this 1 hour can be extended. And last but not least, those strangely seductive and flirty movements and expressions just now cannot be seen by anyone else. Robert wants those for himself. She smiled and readily agreed to his terms and conditions. Busting out her flirty gestures once again, she swore that these things would be for him and him only. Our boy could not even handle a little bit of the heat. How could he even handle the whole flame? With the conditions settled, Robert initiated the process. Even if what he releases turns out to be a deceitful and mischievous presence, he just can't resist the adorable girl in front of him. The omniscient AI system quickly started generating the substitute out of thin air. Once done, a bizarre-looking substitution puppet synthesis has been successfully brought into the physical world. Using the puppet as a proxy into the inside of the barrier, the substitution process followed. A bright light illuminated the surroundings and eventually wrapped around the puppet's body. The next thing you know, the lady from the barrier was already out in the grassy ground of the secret forest for the first time in God knows how long. After the substitution process concluded, the midnight silence returned. She looked behind and saw the barrier from the outside for the first time in forever. She really did come out. Her only wish has been granted, thanks to this weird big white carrot who came from out of nowhere. Unfortunately, the substitution and the clever escape plan took more toll on his frail vegetable body than expected. With his spiritual power depleted and his whole frame deflated, Bairoy panicked. She just got out, and it looked like her master was already on the brink of death. She dubbed him Da Gen and swiftly ran to his side, picked his flaccid body up, and stuck him in between her chest. Robert would have loved to be in this position had he been feeling a little better, but being lodged between her breasts is just making him feel even weaker. Sucked dry of spirit power, the soft sensation made him drain his blood from a severe nosebleed too. Bairoy was terrified. She just got her ticket out of this place, and the said ticket was already accepting the coming of a second death due to a fragile fate. Unbeknownst to the two, something has been set into motion tonight. Looking into the distance, towards the dense forest, prominent figures of the world sensed that the spiritual pressure that had always existed in the middle of the secret forest had disappeared. Bairoy rushed towards her Dogen, who looked like he had just seen a lifelong carousel on the brink of death. He was getting more and more wilted by the second, but Robert felt like he could still salvage the situation somehow. He asked for help to support him back up, and the lady let him lean on her to stay upright. She put his shriveled body against her silky smooth lap and asked if it would make him feel better. It did not help his condition at all. Fortunately, he had no blood left to spurt from his nose. Regaining some of his wits, Robert asked Xiaoquan how he could possibly restore himself to being a fresh white carrot. It turned out that the simplest method to regain his health was to plant himself in the soil. Such a simple solution sounded like a joke to him. He asked the system if it was not just tricking him, as this answer did not seem to be rooted in any scientific basis. Xiaoquan elaborated that the soil in the secret forest contains rich spiritual energy and water. Once planted on it, he can use the absorbability to quickly gain energy, sort of like a charger. Bairoy was confused as to who her master was talking to, as he seemed a bit delirious. She thought that this weird master of hers had an imaginary friend or something. Thinking about it from a scientific standpoint, the absorbability can be understood as utilizing a plant's root system to absorb and convert the spiritual energy and moisture in the soil into its own energy. It is a process similar to photosynthesis in regular plants. It's just that when it comes to vegetable demons, the method involves spiritual energy. Robert had to admit that Xiaoquan is quite good at talking non-stop nonsense, so it's hard to argue. Bairoy's first task as his official retainer was to help plant her master in the soil. Losing strength in his legs, Robert tripped and fell into her massive front pillows again. It certainly softened the fall, but it was also suffocating. She asked if being planted on the soil would be enough for him to regain his spiritual power, and he seemed to think that it was the only solution. But Bairoy revealed that she can also transfer spiritual power directly to him. The amount of power she had accumulated is bordering infinity. Even if she could keep using it continuously, her reservoir might not be depleted for 100 years straight. Robert was pleased to hear of a reliable alternative method aside from burying himself like a lowly plant. Bai was pumped to give it a try and provide some aid to her new master. Robert also trusted her to do right by him as she was the only one he could count on. Much to his surprise, the angelic lady proceeded to pucker up her luscious lips, closing her eyes and moving her head closer to him. Robert blushed and tried to get out of her grasp, but he did not expect the transfer process to be so direct and salacious. When he failed to shake away from her tight grasp, Robert tried to appeal that it was not appropriate for them to kiss so casually like this. Bai must have not heard his pleas, or maybe she just didn't care. The mysterious lady with infinite power commenced with the transfer of spiritual power through the power of a kiss. Right as her lips touched him, Robert felt a surge of energy like he had never felt before. A feeling so euphoric and different that it made him jump into the air. He could physically feel the transformation taking place in his body. His carrot hair felt more illustrious. His beautiful legs could run around the secret forest without feeling fatigued. And even his perky buttocks could reflect the bright moonlit sky. Right now he feels like the most vibrant carrot in the world, even though, from an outside perspective, he still looks like a shriveled up vegetable. After a while, the reality set in that he's just expired produce that no one wants to pick at the market. Behind him, he could faintly hear the system prompt mockingly snicker at his plight. When he tried to confront Xiao Quan, the system returned to that same monotonous voice telling him that it was just an emotionless system. Bai did not know what to say or do. Her boss truly seemed like he had an imaginary friend. He's truly a magical root. Turning to his retainer, he could feel that the main thing he was lacking right now was water. That imaginary friend of his still thinks that being planted in the soil would solve this glaring problem. Hearing that, Bai smiled and assured her boss that she would dig the pit for him to bury into. With one of her fingers, the witch coalesced a densely packed and compressed ball of power. She pointed it towards the nearby land, and the ball of power hurtled with unstoppable momentum. Hitting the ground, the ball immediately caused destruction. That little compressed ball of power eventually made a mushroom cloud explosion akin to a nuclear weapon test in the middle of the quiet secret forest. For the first time, Robert saw the tiniest extent of how powerful his retainer really was. As the thick smoke billowed through the woods and its inhabitants scattered in panic, a certain location on the outskirts of the secret forest picked up the massive event. A catboy hurriedly entered a tent with a report to his young master inside regarding the loud sound that came from the secret forest. The demonic beasts inhabiting the woods are fleeing in all directions. The young master sitting on the throne was intrigued. Not long ago, he was one of the few who sensed the disappearance of the spiritual pressure in the secret forest. This disturbance could be connected to that prior event, which means that a new storm is about to rise. The Beastman's young master raised his hand to action his subordinate to notify the entire clan of what was happening. They must prepare for departure, as the new era is calling. He wants to lead everyone to expand the territory and proactively embrace this new age. They must avoid being left behind at all costs. Back in the restricted area of the secret forest, the explosion had died down, but Robert was still traumatized and weakened. Credit where credit is due, Bairui's quick-digging explosion was highly effective. She made a hole so big that she could not even see Robert at the bottom of it. Meanwhile, the genius stuck in the body of a white carrot was amping himself up to bury himself in the dirt. If the process takes any longer, it would be very bad for him. He was cursing his retainer's ridiculous strength, which dug a hole so deep and massive that he was having a hard time burying it. If he tried releasing her from their contract, he'd be practically digging another hole for himself to die in. Removing all the unnecessary thoughts in his head, he continued shoveling dirt with his legs, focusing on the task at hand. After getting sufficiently deep, he lodged himself between the soil and dirt, waiting for the recovery to happen. He looked like something else from certain angles. Since he's already buried, he called Bairui to come down to the hole and wait for him. Little Miss Loyal Retainer gladly jumped into the gigantic sinkhole that she made, trying to reach her master's side. It had been a while since he got his bottom half in the dirt, but he still felt as miserable and powerless as ever. Meanwhile, Bairui sat beside him, curiously watching and asking if the method was working yet. Not feeling comfortable with her being so close, he told Bairui to step back a little bit and not interfere with his skill. She complied, and he inhaled, clearing his mind of dirty and unnecessary thoughts. As soon as he exhaled, something inside him activated at the same time as his body regained its healthy color and sheen. Under the layer of soil, a magical process was just kick-started. He can finally see the purpose of the carrot's leg hair. He could feel the sensation of energy moving directly from the earth and into his frame. Robert was surprised to find out that he had this strange skill to absorb the energy of the earth deeply engraved in his mind. The motions of using it felt incredibly familiar already. Thanks to that, he regained 100% of his energy to break Bairui out of her prison back. He was reborn and restored as a stronger carrot. Bai looked at her again with wide-eyed wonder and amazement. She could see that her master just grew bigger. Robert regained his confidence, puffing his chest out, and tried to come out of the soil by himself. After a few tries, he accepted that he was too weak to pull himself out of the hole. He had to ask Bai for help, but the lady gladly positioned her hands on his head and assured him that she was super skilled when it came to pulling out stuff that was big, long, and hard. She tried her hardest to pull him out as quickly as possible, holding her breath and skin flushing with a deep shade of red. Finally, Robert has been pulled out. He looks like he just had the best release of his life with how great it felt. Then he was reminded that he used to be the foremost leader in the world of science. And now he's quite literally stuck in this ridiculous situation as a big white carrot. It was a success. And now when our hero was full of strength, it was time to move out. Bai asked Chengxin what their plan of action was. He replied that his spiritual power was currently limited by its capacity, and if he wouldn't be careful, he might turn into a wilted carrot again. So, for this case, he had created a plan B. Enjoying Bairui's softness, he explained to her that it was a so-called backup plan. From what he saw, Chengxin came to the conclusion that in this world, there most likely existed supernatural beings that were also known as demons. The energy source of such beings was most likely spiritual energy. Without even asking Bairui about it, our hero was certain that there were cultivators, various factions, and other magical beings present in this world. That was what carried the danger. At the moment, his spiritual energy was only enough to keep Bairui outside the barrier for 1 hour. And if he turned into a wilted carrot, he probably wouldn't be able to deal with the danger on his own in this state. The chance of him dying was almost 100%. Hearing this, Bairui smilingly assured that he had nothing to worry about since he could borrow spiritual power from her. However, Chengxin had no intention of going this way. It might not be a bad thing for him now, but it could play a cruel joke on him in the long run. He couldn't rely on her strength all the time. In his previous life, his death had been premature, but in this life, he was determined to act cautiously to continue his research in this world. After careful reflection and analysis, Chengxin eventually came to the conclusion that for him, the right and proper life path was scientific cultivation. When Bairui asked him what it was, he proudly replied that the essence of this path was an efficient and healthy lifestyle. It was a road to gradually achieve the 4 stages of modernization, to then take big steps towards the 5th era of modernization. The combination of human cognitive abilities with artificial intelligence was the hallmark of the 5th industrial revolution. In this era, humans and robots will coexist, helping each other. The industrialization of the 5th era would provide a huge leap in human development. So far, this was just a fantasy, for Chengxin was no different from an ordinary carrot. To achieve this, he had a long way to go. Fortunately, our hero already had a plan. To reduce the risks caused by the loss of spiritual energy, Chengxin intended to focus on scientific cultivation as well as improving his living conditions. The first step was to find a safe place to live, and then gradually improve and modernize it. With so much information, Bairui's brain began smoking. From her appearance, it was clear that she didn't understand much of what Chengxin had said. However, it didn't matter to her. Realizing that Chengxin was very smart, Bairui completely trusted him and said that she would do whatever he ordered. At the same time, our hero asked the system if it had a trading system. The system replied that it did not have such functionality. However, it added that it could create any object that was in his imagination if he had the necessary materials. All he had to do was touch the materials with his root part. In a note, the system strongly advised against absorbing living organisms as materials. It's prohibited in the cultivation world. After reading this information, Chengxin assumed that absorbing living organisms meant joining the path of demonic cultivation. It was forbidden in this world. Because of this prohibition, our hero's rebellious nature began to kick in, and now he was even more eager to break it. This alarmed the system and caused it to issue a serious warning. It said that becoming a demonic cultivator was punishable, adding that if it caught up with him in his current state, he would instantly perish. At the bottom, it was written in small letters that if he became a master, things might be different. Unfortunately for Chengxin, he couldn't read what was written at the bottom, so he started demanding the system to show it to him again. In the end, he was unable to get anything out of the stubborn system. Turning to the confused Bairui, Chengxin told her to ignore his strange behavior. Right now, they needed to continue following their plan before her active time ran out. He decided to start by building a small wooden house, and for that, he asked Bairui to cut down some trees. The girl agreed without a second thought, because in her opinion, it was the easiest thing to do. However, as soon as Chengxin saw the magic in her hand, he immediately panicked and shouted for her to wait. He needed wood to build a house, not ashes. Remembering the magic she had done last time, he asked her not to use such powerful abilities again. Bairui replied in confusion that she had used the weakest ability last time. Chungxin didn't know what to say. In the end, he asked her to be cautious and use minimum effort. Following our hero's orders, Bai Rui activated her ability. But this time too, things didn't go according to plan. At the same time, a beautiful girl with bare ears was bathing in one of the lakes located in this forest. She was very comfortable and pleasant, and nothing foreshadowed trouble. But suddenly a few centimeters away from her flew a huge fireball, which scared her very much. The girl stood still for a few seconds, trying to come to her senses. There was too much commotion in the forest that day. But what struck the bear girl even more was the huge attack mark. Looks like she should stop bathing in the evenings. At the same time, Chungxin was standing near the large attack mark of Bai Rui. His worst guesses were correct, and instead of wood, he only received ashes. Bai Rui apologized, saying that it was an accident. But our hero didn't care anymore. All he wanted now was to get the wood he needed. After a bit of thinking, he could think of nothing better than the traditional method of collecting wood. And that was to use Bai Rui's physical strength alone. The girl was very inspired by the idea and said that he could rely on her. A few moments later, she was standing in front of a large tree. The method of chopping wood with hand chops seemed very slow to her, so she couldn't think of anything better than just pulling out the 1,000-year-old tree. Our hero's mind was clearly not ready for such a turn. The huge tree that had been growing in this place for thousands of years was pulled out like a feather. Chungxin couldn't stop marveling at Bai Rui's strength. With the tree in her hands, she ran up to him and asked if he would be okay with it. He, still in shock, nodded confusedly, and he promised himself that he would use Bai Rui's power more carefully in the future. Since all the conditions were met, the system told Chungxin to touch the tree trunk. In the next instant, the synthesis of wooden planks for construction began. Although it only took 5 seconds of real time, by the end of the operation, Chungxin had turned back into a wilted carrot. But the result was worth it. He was successfully able to synthesize 100 units of wood, which were now stored in his inventory. The system reported that to use them, he just needed to visualize the name of the item in his head. However, Chungxin was too tired to think about anything. Concerned, Bai Rui placed our hero on her lap and inquired about his well-being. Chungxin replied with difficulty that he needed to return to the soil as soon as possible to recover his strength. Soon, Chungxin was back at the bottom of the pit, and he was very happy about it. His spiritual energy was being used up too quickly. He had done very little and was already tired. He couldn't let this continue. He began to think about how to speed up the process of his advancement. However, his thoughts were suddenly interrupted by an unexpected occurrence. Bai Rui's body began to disappear. At first, Chungxin was startled, but he soon remembered that this was what was supposed to happen. Time was up, and Bai Rui's body began to return back to the barrier. The system also reported that he could now only use the puppet replacement again after 23 hours. Our hero realized that this was inevitable, but he still didn't want to part with Bai Rui. After turning Bai Rui into a blob of energy, the system placed it inside Chungxin. The system said that it would analyze and obtain information about the creature named Bai Rui. When our hero asked if it was normal, the system assured him it was fine. The system advised him not to worry about anything and to wait for the results of the analysis. His main task now was to absorb water and spiritual energy. The system started deciphering and analyzing all attributes: biological, strength, ecological, and behavioral. But as it turned out later, it wasn't that simple. During the analyzing process, an error suddenly occurred, which the system immediately tried to solve. Despite the complexity, the omniscient system refused to back down and continued analyzing. However, despite its best efforts, the analysis still failed. The system kept trying, but each time it failed. But there was no problem that the system could not solve. It was only a question of time. After calculations, the system reported that it would take approximately 952 hours and 7 minutes to solve the problem. The system asked if Chungxin wanted it to continue solving the issue. Our hero didn't mind, but seeing the tired look on the system's face, he replied that it could solve the problem when it had free time. Fortunately, even these attempts by the system bore fruit, and the result was that Chungxin could now use 1/1000th of Bai Rui's abilities. To our hero, this was incredible news. At the same time, several spiritual leopards were running through the night forest. They were rushing towards their destination at high speed, and after some time they managed to reach it. As it turned out, their destination was the huge pit that Bai Rui had created, and in which Chungxin was recovering his strength right now. Seeing the scale of the disaster, the leopards immediately realized that something big had happened. They hadn't encountered such serious issues in a long time. In addition, the barrier in which Bai Rui was sealed had suddenly disappeared. It was obvious that the forest was about to undergo a great change from now on. But for now, this was just their assumptions. In order to confirm their guesses or find some clues, they needed to go down into the pit. Meanwhile in the pit, Chungxin couldn't be happy with the strength he had gained. He couldn't wait to use his little muscles somewhere. Although he still didn't feel as good as he felt in his human body, but he was already making progress. Suddenly, his joy was interrupted by a system that reported that several strong creatures were approaching them. The system's words were true. After a while, our hero heard the sound of approaching footsteps. It was as if he was in a horror movie. Darkness, someone's approaching footsteps, growling, and the unknown. Chungxin was scared and didn't know what to do. It was easy to guess that they were wild beasts, and they came just when Bai Rui was sleeping. The very next moment, several spiritual leopards appeared out of the darkness. Their gazes searched every corner of the pit as if looking for something. Suddenly, the gazes of all the leopards went straight to the center of the pit. They stared at our hero, who naturally stood out in the middle of the empty cave. But despite Chungxin's pessimistic assumptions, to the spiritual leopards, he was just an ordinary carrot. To them, his presence there was both surprising and disappointing. They had come here to find some clues, however, they only managed to find a carrot. Chungxin, on the other hand, continued to shake with fear at this time. He had already guessed that the three strong beings the system was talking about were these spiritual leopards. Suddenly, one of the leopards offered to quench his thirst with a radish or carrot, but the other one immediately dismissed the idea and told him to stop joking. Even if it was a spiritual radish, no one would eat it. Although Chungxin was a little offended, but this was a good thing for him. It was better than being eaten. In his mind, he thanked fate that he had not been reborn into some spiritual rabbit, because in that case, things could have been completely different. All the while, the system continued to analyze and transform the energy. The progress bar gradually continued to grow, and the moment it reached 100%, a bright light flashed. After a while, Chungxin's spiritual body appeared from there. His eyes were still closed, and he didn't really understand what was happening. Finally daring to open his eyes, he immediately stared at his translucent body. Seeing his bewilderment, the system explained that it had transformed Bai Rui's power to suit him. And now that the girl was sealed in his body, he could move freely in his soul state. The system also clarified that if he used his power, his soul state could be seen. At the same time, the spiritual leopards had completely lost hope of finding any clues in this pit. They had no choice but to return and report back to their master. And just as they were about to leave, one leopard suddenly wanted to pee. There was nothing to do, so the head leopard told him to hurry up and finish it quickly. At the same time, Chungxin was enjoying the feeling of freedom and lightness of his new form. However, his joy was destined to be short-lived. The reason for this was this leopard. Thinking himself a hero, he decided to help the poor carrot and fertilize it. But our hero did not like this idea at all. Chungxin was so angry that his eyes began to blaze with rage. His honor was in danger, and he was going to do his best to prevent this from happening. Even the spiritual leopard felt a bit of our hero's rage. And his friends too noticed that it was a little colder around, and they had goosebumps running down their backs. But the impatient leopard did not understand the hint and continued to prepare to do his dirty deed. This was when Chungxin's patience exploded, and the demonstration of his strength made him visible to the leopards. They immediately growled fearfully, not realizing who had appeared here. Our hero showed up in his human form in front of them, and the power emanating from him made the leopard's fur stood up. Chungxin simply couldn't understand. How could they allow the thought of peeing on him? They would pay a high price for this. The poor leopard spirits were scared out of their wits after such a fiery appearance of our hero. Chungxin in his mental form was simply burning with rage. He simply could not tolerate monsters, humans, and other animals and creatures that are so shameless that they mark their territory anywhere. All those who defecate or urinate anywhere, they're all the same. For such, he had no regret, and filled with righteous rage, he used a bit of Bai Rui's power to confiscate the tools used in the crime. A cry of pain resounded over the dark forest, and no more bushes were to be harmed by this leopard spirit's tool. All three leopard spirits rushed with all their might away from this cursed place. But even after they disappeared into the darkness, the whimpering of the leopard spirit devoid of its tool could still be heard for a long time. Chungxin had to admit that they had run very fast. Their escape was only to the advantage of our hero. He was sure that they would spread rumors about the evil spirit in this forest. And then Chungxin's 5-day plan would go smoothly without any interruptions. After all, our hero is just a weak carrot, and even such a minor use of strength on one leopard resulted in a backache. It made him wonder if in this life and in this world, except as an out-of-body experience, he could only exist in the form of a carrot, from which anyone could only squeeze out all the spiritual power and it would disappear without a trace. Such a prospect of existence was very doubtful. But the system came to the rescue. Xiao Quan explained to our hero that the spiritual power of a carrot was potentially unlimited, and every time he would use his absorption skill, he would increase his spiritual power limit. He should be squeezed dry. The more thoroughly Chungxin wilts, the more astonishing the breakthrough in values will be. However, such advice was not to our hero's liking and seemed dubious. He saw the words "squeeze dry" too clearly. Now, after a hard and busy day, Chungxin was very tired and wanted to sleep properly. With that, he asked the omniscient AI system to be on guard all night and wake him up as soon as there would be any danger. Morning came with bright rays of the sun, but it was not them that woke up our hero. It was the morning shower of cold water. Chung-shin immediately woke up thinking it was raining. But it was only Bai Rui. She came out of her barrier and immediately noticed something interesting. At the bottom of the pit she dug last night, a spring had appeared. This land was truly blessed. Our hero was a little surprised that she herself came out of the barrier. But before he could ask his questions, Bai Rui got right down to business, and decided to help him get out of the ground by grabbing the leaves at the top, completely ignoring the screams of our hero. During the night in the ground, our carrot has become much more healthy and bigger. Now even Bai Rui noticed that he looked smoother and bigger than yesterday. Moreover, he probably tastes better than before. Chung-sin was embarrassed by what she was doing and how she was rubbing him, and resisted as best he could. But the strength in this fight was not equal. Not only that, but the omniscient AI system also appeared and explained to him that because his spiritual limit had been increased by 1 level, he had become more delicious like a carrot. This was where our hero had even more questions. This was definitely not a good thing. You know, being a tasty vegetable is bad luck in the forest. Finally, Chung-shin was able to break free from the embrace of our cute witch with amnesia, and began to explain to her what she had done wrong. First, the next time she pulls him out, she should just dig him out instead of pulling him. This was all a bit embarrassing and uncomfortable for our hero. The second thing was their plan of action for the day, which was to build the perfect wooden house. With such a place, they would be able to have a shelter and a place for scientific activities. Bayroi was only in favor of building the house. Chung-shin immediately got down to business and opened the inventory, ordering Xiaoquan to prepare the building materials. Bayroi also supported his imaginary friend as much as she could, but unfortunately, she was doing it in the wrong direction since she simply didn't even see him. In any case, our hero assumed that according to Xiaoquan's functions, he should be able to directly build a wooden house. Unfortunately, Chung-shin's current spiritual power was insufficient to create large objects. In such a case now, there was a very high possibility of a malfunction in the process. However, he was still able to use his witch. As soon as he asked if she knew what shape the house was supposed to be, she immediately assured him that he had nothing to worry about and ran off to build it. Of course, from the outside it all looked like a fight, and in the process, the environment was damaged inappropriately. But Chung-shin along with his system cheered her on like the best cheerleaders. Unfortunately, the result was disappointing. For our hero, but not for Bai Rui. Like a real witch, she made herself a house with legs and arms. Although the house was flat for some reason, but that's another matter. Chung-shin could not understand what kind of postmodern art is this. Our hero had to take control of everything and draw a demonstration of what a normal wooden house looks like on the ground. Bayroi was supposed to do everything just so, and like a real architect, Chung-shin sent her to work, advising her not to become the worst subordinate he had ever managed. But instead of getting to work, Bai Rui froze in place. Our carrot even started asking what was wrong with her and why wasn't she moving. Was his attitude too strict? The real reason was something else entirely. Someone was watching them. That was something our witch was not used to forgive. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared from the clearing, and appeared right behind the frightened girl spy who was hiding in the bushes. It was she who was bathing in the lake while Bai Rui was busy chopping down trees. Our witch immediately grabbed the stranger and, threatening to end her existence, quickly asked who she was. The poor girl was so scared that she didn't even know what to say, and Bai Rui started sniffing her. That was enough to realize that the spy girl was a member of the Iron-Eating clan. But another question remained unanswered. Why was she spying on our heroes? The silence dragged on as the girl came to her senses. Finally, she said that she hadn't been watching them at all, but was just picking mushrooms nearby. Of course, Bai Rui did not believe her, but she decided not to act on her own and let the spy's fate be decided by the master. The witch's single spell was enough to move them together from the forest to the clearing. Chung-sin was a little scared at first, but then quickly asked if this was the girl who was spying on them. Bayroi held her tightly with a murderous look, but our hero only needed one look to realize that the girl didn't seem to be aggressive. How did he know? It was just his gut feeling, just like an instinct. Immediately the system came to the help and explained that because the power of spiritual carrots is too weak, they have developed the ability to sense crises to protect themselves. Even subtle malice can be detected. It was a very useful ability for such weak beings. Meanwhile, Bayroi began to lose patience and used force to make the captive speak. The girl repeated that it was not a surveillance and screamed that it hurts. Chung-shin did not want to watch her suffering and first of all ordered Bayroi to let her go. The witch immediately obeyed her master. Our hero believed that captives should be treated kindly, but she must also tell the truth to keep it that way. If she says it wasn't surveillance, then why was she hiding behind the trees? The frightened girl immediately began to tell that there were always loud noises in this forest, and last night, it happened again. She had also heard strange rumors from the other tribes, That's why she was so curious. She wanted to come and check it out for herself. But of course, she didn't expect to meet anyone here. Chungshin didn't expect those 3 leopards to spread such nonsense, although he gave them a good scare back then. If these rumors were to be believed, his image in this forest would be quite terrifying. But none of this explained why the young girl had come here to investigate. Bairoy missed the moment of meeting the 3 leopards and demanded an explanation as to what rumors the girl was talking about. She hesitated and didn't know where to start from. Then the ominous figure of Bairuei loomed over her and demanded that she answer the question and not overthink it. One look at Bairuei made even our hero uncomfortable. He didn't understand why the witch had changed so much and became a completely wicked woman. Chungshin even began to worry if he had not completely screwed up and let loose a big and terrible monster. Although if he listened to his inner carrot sense, he didn't feel any aggression or threat from her. She was probably just worried for his safety, and that's why she acted that way. In hope, he took another look at her, and immediately realized how wrong he was. She was the devil in the flesh. The poor girl in front of her had a very hard time. Finally, she was able to squeeze out of herself a couple of words that the rumors were that a deity appeared in the forest. Such an answer our hero did not expect. But he had not misheard. It was a deity. In the girl's imagination was something far from the truth. But it seems that she was not the only one who imagined it that way. Her clan and herself wanted to come and see this great deity, to pray to him and ask for his blessings and to keep them safe and joyful. In all of this, our hero had only one question. Which clan members was she talking about? The answer came by itself, as the soil began to crumble from the top of the pit, and a multitude of eared figures appeared. Damn it, a whole tribe of giant pandas had come to visit our hero. Chungshin didn't understand how there could be so many of them here. Bairoy came to the rescue and explained that this was the Iron-Eating clan. In her remaining memories, they were ruthless and evil ancient divine beasts, although they didn't seem that way to our hero now. According to the legends, the Iron-Eating clan was located on Chiyu's mount. Their feces were as hard as steel because they ate iron without harming their stomachs. The legend said that Chiyu casually scooped a lump of feces from the panda's buttocks and shot them out with it. That was like swoosh, and it becomes a peerless, unique hidden weapon. And this hidden weapon has a hidden property. Well, not really hidden. A strong smell. Bairoy took everything seriously and didn't want any competition. She threateningly told the young girl that there were no deities here, but the Iron-Eating clan representative couldn't accept that. She knew very well that the deity had driven away the leopards from the Wind clan. Chungshin had to intervene and try to calm Bairoy down so that she wouldn't be harsh to the non-aggressive guest. But even he assured the girl that there was no deity here and she should get her clan out of here quickly. She couldn't believe it. There was supposed to be a wilted carrot in a pit in the middle of the forest. The rumors from the Wind clan described it all very clearly. Then she froze for a moment, as if mesmerized. It was only now that she realized that the carrot was talking, and that she had been talking to the carrot for several minutes. Her next reaction was not at all standard. She squealed with delight, and bowed to our hero. Now she was addressing him as a great deity. In the legend passed down in their clan from generation to generation, it was said that one day there will come a spirit carrot that can speak, and he will come riding on colorful clouds to save their clan. And this talking carrot would become their true deity. And now she was 100% sure that our hero was that deity. He's the deity that belongs to their Iron-Eating clan. All the pandas bowed respectfully, and they didn't care at all about the cries of Chungshin, who was trying to explain to them that they were wrong. He was not a deity, and he didn't have any money to give them. Nor did he tell them to bow at all. The panda girl immediately rushed to hug our hero, convinced that the great god had finally arrived to save them. The other pandas decided to follow suit. These cute little lumps all rolled to the bottom of the pit, filling up the entire space. Bairoy didn't like what was happening at all. Damn it, she couldn't let anyone touch the big carrot besides her. That big carrot belonged only to her, and she wasn't going to share. She was ready to take what was hers by force. But Panda Girl wasn't about to give up either. Each was pulling in their own direction, and no matter which way you look at it, only our hero was a victim. Well, not really a victim. Two beauties were pulling him with all their might. And all because of some damn crazy legend.